Hi, this is Adewale Ademuyiwa from StressTherapist.net. Have you been through some traumatic experiences which have now pushed you into the habit of blocking painful thoughts and bearing negative emotions as a way of getting through each day? If this feels relevant to you, then you would most likely be familiar with experiencing surges of distressing emotions that come upon you at the most unexpected time, at times making you cry for no apparent reasons. You see, if all you do is block and bury these uncomfortable thoughts and emotions, the truth is that you are unknowingly leaving yourself open to unexpected experiences of breakdowns in the future. In this new 3-part video series, I'll be showing you some strategies you can use to safely replace just blocking. Whilst I focus the videos on post-traumatic stress disorder, these strategies can help to take the sting out of painful thoughts and emotions caused by any traumatic experience. At the same time, these strategies will help you move on from those experiences so you can carry on with your life. Actually, just a quick note, today's video clip is an edit from our latest weekly live discussion. So, if you are already a registered member, you can find the full uncut version in our members area. There was a lady I worked with. I can't tell you her name just for confidential reasons, but she was involved in a fatal accident. She had her baby who was a few weeks old with her in the car, and she was on a motorway. A car hit her from the back and slammed her into another car in front. She became unconscious for a few minutes. Fortunately, the baby wasn't hurt. She noticed there was a bit of blood dropping on the baby's lips. She could not talk about the incident without experiencing excruciating, exhausting pain for days. So, understandably, she just avoided talking about this incident. But after diving into some of the strategies I'll be sharing with you today, she was able to start talking about her traumatic experience without any distress at all. She was able to continue with her life, resume her role as an effective mother, able to re-engage with her husband, able to go back to work. So these strategies are strategies that will definitely help if you persevere. To help you remember the strategies easily, I know you are used to me doing this. I like to put things in formulas. So I titled this the 3 C's: the cause, the coping, and the cure. The cause. What causes PTSD? To understand what causes PTSD, let's first dial into the normal recovery process from a trauma. Let's say I was involved in a fight where somebody almost beat me to near death. How does the brain compute this information? This is key specifically to PTSD. What we don't realize is initially what happens is that our brain, our system, codes that information first through our sight, our hearing, our feeling, our smell, and our taste. At the very beginning of an incident, these parts of our bodies experience what's happening, and our brain has to decode what that means. This is all part of our short-term memory. Now, in order to start to understand what is happening, the brain has to use another part of the brain called the hippocampus. I've used an image of a hippopotamus. What does the hippocampus do? The hippocampus combines all the information that our senses are seeing, checks our long-term memory to see if there's any data that you can reference that are similar, and then make sense of what the senses are seeing. So the hippocampus helps us to create meaning from real-time experiences. It compares the sensory data it receives with data that already exists in our long-term memory in order to create meaning. It has to do that, otherwise we will not be able to understand anything. So that's what the hippocampus does. The hippocampus helps us to make sense of our sensory data and helps us to then pack that into the long-term memory. So it references the long-term memory, compares it with sensory data, and make meaning, which it then stores again in the long-term memory. Right, so as I'm saying, hippocampus, long-term memory. So data comes first from our senses to the hippocampus and then to the long-term memory. Now, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is the seat of emotion. All the emotions we experience, amygdala is responsible for us being able to trigger those emotions. Now, the amygdala also has a direct connection to our senses. So that if, for example, you come across a threat, you come across a lion, you don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. As soon as we see something, the amygdala assumes it's a threat. This is the amygdala in the brain, the red bulbs. And interestingly, you notice this is the hippocampus, this curved thing on top. You notice that they are quite close to each other. But what's important for us to note here, as I said earlier, because it gets direct feedback information from our senses, it checks with the hippocampus to see whether the data means there's a threat. The hippocampus checks in the long-term memory, and if it feels, yeah, the long-term memory has information that suggests what you're seeing now is a threat, it passes a threat signal back, which then causes the amygdala to induce a stress hormone, and then we experience the fight or flight syndrome. So what's the importance of all that? With PTSD, what tends to happen is that when we experience a trauma, the emotional pain caused by the trauma is just too much for us to even want to contemplate processing it. So often what people do for different reasons is that they block the emotion, they block the memory. They try to cope by pushing everything away. So what happens is when you block things that way, your hippocampus doesn't get a chance to allow the long-term memory to process the information. Hence, it's like the information is still remaining in the short-term memory area of the brain. So usually what should happen is this: when somebody goes through a traumatic experience, within 3 to 6 months of the experience, people should have been able to process the experience to a place where it doesn't cause them too much distress anymore. But if you're blocking, what tends to happen is your ability to cope won't return, and you could stay in that frame of mind really all your life because of the blocking, because it's not allowing the brain to process the data and get you to a place where you are now feeling okay. And so it's good to understand that you might be doing something that's causing you to block your brain from processing information. And there are often very good reasons why people do this blocking. It's not like they intentionally want to block, but the experience of the pain, the distress of the memories is just often too much to bear for different reasons. But some of the other things that will cause people to block the experience, and some of the things that I have come across, is guilt. Like for the lady who had the accidents, the client I mentioned earlier on, hers was guilt. The guilt of not being able to be there for her baby. And that caused her to feel like she's got to stop being so stupid so she can get on with things, that her baby needs her. For some people, it's a shame. A sense that they are not coping with life makes them feel shameful. My experience is a lot of people who don't understand the effects of mental health, who maybe before they experienced a trauma assumed that those people who have breakdowns, that they are weak. When they experience a trauma themselves that puts them in the place of experiencing so much emotions, they start to feel that they are weak themselves and start feeling very ashamed of it. And that can cause people to block the experience of these emotions or memories as well. For some people, it's fear. A fear that they're having a breakdown, they're going mental, they're going crazy. For others, it's actually the excruciating sense of the pain that causes them to block. And then finally, for some, it's the denial. For example, you don't want to accept the fact that a loved one has gone. could be an example of why people might block. So people tend to block for so many different reasons, but the final outcome of it is that the brain is not allowed to process the information. Hence, the person is living as if they are still in the experience. Hence, they're getting nightmares about it. Hence, they are getting flashbacks about it. Hence, something would trigger an intense emotion and put them in a place where they're completely overwhelmed. It's all because this blocking is not allowing the brain to be certain that the experience is gone and it's no more an issue. So everybody understands the cause now.